Hey everybody, welcome to the Cultivated Life community. I love resources. I used to run a library. It's always been my thing to kind of share resources, and I know it can be overwhelming, but I want to make sure that I'm sharing resources with you that are helpful and some that are free and some that are paid for. So today I'm going to touch on the topic of boundaries, and if you guys aren't already familiar with the book Boundaries, most of you probably are. This is a copy of the reprinted version. I have a piece that I just wrote for I Believe. The topic is 10 signs that you're bad at setting personal boundaries, which, okay, I don't really like the negative tone of the starting off with it, but the truth is I have been bad at setting boundaries. I'm still growing in setting boundaries, and a lot of us, especially Christian believers who want to do well for God, who want to serve and honor Him, who want to do the right things, we have a good heart. We want to help other people, but we can get caught up in taking on so much. So part of my story, I read the book Boundaries well over a decade ago. I started reading it. I was kind of bored, and I said, it doesn't apply to me. I was more in fiction that time, and I was just like, no. And the reason I thought it didn't apply to me was because I had this very limited understanding of boundaries. To me, somebody who couldn't set good boundaries was somebody who simply took on too many tasks. They said yes to too many things when somebody said, can you do this? Or like somebody wants you to serve in some way, or lead a particular ministry, or maybe be a prayer partner with them in a certain thing, in that because you would feel bad to say no, you would say yes to all of it, which is true. That is part of struggling with boundaries, but it's one aspect. It's a very limited aspect of setting boundaries. What I came to learn was that there was, hey Pam, I would love any feedback, and if you guys wanted to share ways that you've struggled with boundaries or that you've seen other people struggle with boundaries, I'd love to hear. So one of the things that I learned, and it was kind of surprising to me when I wrote this article for I Believe what came out, because as I reflected back on the 10 signs that came out, I thought, well, there's some other really obvious signs that you're bad at setting boundaries that maybe have to do with the stress level because you're taking on too much, the maybe depression or anger because your emotions are so caught up in caring for other people and you're not actually dealing with what's going on inside of you. So it kind of surprised me, and honestly, at this moment, I don't remember the things that I wrote down, so I'll let you know when the article comes out. But one of the things that I recognized about boundaries was it wasn't just saying yes to too many tasks. For me, it was also saying yes to too many thoughts, too many expectations, too many responsibilities. I was taking on things that weren't mine to own. And so with a brain that's kind of always processing and thinking about lots of different things, I would try to fix things. And of course, that puts me in the place of God, and it doesn't work. And me trying to fix another person. Well, there's an aspect where we want to understand, we want to have an understanding of what's going on and why it's happening that can be helpful. But I get caught up in that so much that instead of allowing that to inspire me to take some positive steps of action and my own self-awareness in what I'm okay with and not okay with, it would become more about, okay, well, because I don't feel okay with this, I'm going to make sure that you stop doing it because I'm not okay with it. So setting boundaries was really coming to that understanding of saying, okay, boundaries has to do with, and Cloud and Townsend talk about this really well, boundaries has to do with your thoughts, attitudes, actions, desires, opinions, all of those that belong to you, and each person has their own. So this is really, really freeing when we understand the concept of boundaries. When I realize that I am responsible for my thoughts, not somebody else's thoughts, okay? So if I do something and they think negatively of me or they respond in a negative way, I'm not responsible for their thought or their action about it. I'm also not responsible for their opinion in the matter. However, here's something that I think we can get tripped up in really easily when it comes to trying to figure out how we set boundaries and engaging with people in a safe way and in actually connecting with others. And one thing that we might do in learning to set boundaries is kind of go overboard and say, well, I'm not responsible. So sorry, take that. If I'm not responsible for your thoughts and actions, then it really doesn't matter. I set my boundaries. This is what I'm responsible for, and I'm good. That is lacking compassion. That is lacking kindness. And it's not actually setting healthy boundaries. It's really just kind of putting a wall up around yourself, because there still has to be some permeation between you and another person. We can care for other people without, so I kind of put it this way, we can be caring for the other person without caring on behalf of the other person, caring for the person on behalf of them. So for example, somebody, let's say a child who's still living at home and they are struggling to get the money that they need to move out of the house or to make some good choices, we can care for the fact that it's challenging. And as a parent, we can help equip them and give them maybe some goals to set or something, but ultimately they're still responsible for their decision in that. And if they continue to choose unhealthy decisions, then we have to decide, okay, well, I'm not okay with them staying in my home and I'm providing for them long term. So I can care that this is the challenge for you, but I'm also going to care enough about you and your well-being that this is my limit. And that's kind of more of a sense of putting up a boundary around how much that impacts you, because you do not own how they feel about it. You can care for how they feel, whoever it is, your spouse, your friend, other people that you have, maybe in your ministry or in your writing, the people that you serve. You care for how you impact them, but you don't carry the weight of your impact on them, if that makes sense. So, for example, when you say something and they interpret it as attacking them, maybe that wasn't your intent. That part doesn't really matter. What matters is how they received it. So you can care for how they received it. You don't have to own that it was attacking unless it is attacking, but you don't have to own the way that they perceived it onto you, if that makes sense. I'm probably not making clear sense on it. But I can tell you who really can help with that, and that is the boundaries guys. And there are other people that talk about boundaries. And really, I think some of us who struggle with boundaries also struggle with codependency of some level. When people think of codependency, usually you would think of that with addicts and maybe an alcoholic spouse or a parent or something like that, and somebody who's been codependent. Stephanie Tucker, she has a bunch of videos on YouTube on Christian codependency and a workbook. And she talks about codependency as something that really we all struggle with because we're becoming dependent on something other than God. So to some extent, we all have that challenge, whether or not you want to call it codependency or not. But when I'm so dependent on how another person responds to me, and I'm not able to set those healthy boundaries, then I am weighed down with their thoughts and feelings when they may not even care. Like it may not even disrupt them that they said something that was rude or insensitive. They may not even notice that it was. But if I don't say anything about it, I'm carrying all that weight. So as we're growing and listening to the Holy Spirit, there are times when we need to speak up and say, that was not okay. That harmed me when you did it. Maybe you didn't mean to, but it did harm me. So if you guys would like further information on boundaries, I would highly recommend the books. If you haven't already read it, I would love to hear if you have. And then boundaries, there's also boundaries in marriage. There is boundaries with teens, face-to-face conversations, difficult conversations. So boundaries face-to-face might be what it's called. They retitled it a couple times. But the primary resource that I want to share with you is boundaries.me, which is by Dr. Henry Cloud. So Cloud and Townsend wrote these books together. They both provide tons of content and other books that they've done. Townsend has an institute where he's training counselors and lay leaders to help them. And then Cloud has boundaries.me, which is only $9 a month. And you get a copy of Boundaries, the book right now. I think it's still available. And you get access to a Facebook group. He's come in there live and chatted. And then you get different video content, which I had it pulled up. Let me see if I could still, I'll just remember what it was. Boundaries, see when it's hard to say no, things that you have control over that you can work on. There was a topic that Shauna Nequist came in and did some videos on. So they're all kind of short videos with some downloadable workbook type of content so that you can do the work of growing in boundaries and understanding the difference between boundaries and walls and what it sounds like to give a caring response. He doesn't put it this way specifically, but when Dr. Cloud gives examples of boundaries, he does it in a way that shows kindness and compassion without carrying the weight of the feelings and the thoughts that that person, it belongs to them, not to you. So that makes sense. Share with me a little bit of your experiences with struggling with boundaries and maybe how you've grown in it. I would love to hear that, because I have my own stories, but I'd love to hear from you as well. I will be doing future teachings on boundaries and going more in depth on the content on YouTube, because I want Facebook Live to be an opportunity for us to actually engage in conversation and have some challenges with the video and the audio keeping sync and a couple other technical challenges. So going forward, if you would like to continue the conversation, join me and Cultivated Life Community on Facebook. Just make sure that you're signed up for the newsletter and then request access on Facebook, and make sure that you've given me the answer to the questions that are there. Likewise, if you want to join Rise Up Writers, make sure you're subscribed to the newsletter and then answer the questions in the group, Rise Up Writers community on Facebook, so that I can get you subscribed. But the additional teaching content is going to be on YouTube. And down the road, I hope to be offering courses and other short-term content that would help you actually dig into the personal work of why it might be hard for you to set boundaries, or how it has impacted you in the past and how you have impacted other people. So that's yet to come. Thanks for joining me today. And together, we're just going to keep cultivating a life that helps us experience more of God's peace, joy, and freedom, because we have the power of the Holy Spirit with us, and let's lean into Him.